Hello there, I'm the Biblical Translator, and I like to talk about things that are happening in the news that seem unrelated to us as Christians and bring the two of them together. So I've called this Mirror Life and the Wisdom to Pause, a biblical lens on a scientific warning. I want to speak plainly and directly about this story because it isn't really about laboratories or molecules at heart. It's about discernment, it's about restraint, and it's about what Scripture has always warned us to consider when human ability begins to run ahead of human wisdom. Right now, scientists around the world are warning about something called mirror life. It doesn't exist yet, but it could. And the warning isn't shouted, it's measured. 38 researchers are asking for a pause, for global conversation, for shared responsibility before something entirely new is brought into the world. To understand why this matters spiritually, we need to understand what they're talking about in human terms. All known life shares a common design. The molecules that build cells, repair tissue, fight disease, they all follow the same orientation, the same handedness. Life recognizes life because it was shaped within the same order. Scripture tells us that creation itself has an order, not random, not accidental, but spoken into being with intention. Genesis says God saw all that he had made and it was good. Not just powerful, but good, balanced, interconnected. Mirror life would deliberately reverse that orientation. It would be biology built to operate outside the shared grammar of creation, still alive, still replicating, but unfamiliar to the systems God has already woven together. That unfamiliarity is the concern. The scientists are not saying this will destroy the world. They are saying we do not yet know how this will behave once released. And Scripture has a lot to say about acting when knowledge is partial. The book of Proverbs tells us, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. That verse isn't about fear, it's about wisdom. It's about recognizing when the road ahead is uncharted and choosing humility over momentum. What's striking is that these scientists are not motivated by panic or power. They are motivated by responsibility. They are asking the world to slow down before a line is crossed that cannot easily be uncrossed. And that idea of irreversible thresholds is deeply biblical. From the very beginning, humanity is given creative capacity, but also limits. Adam is told to tend to the garden, not to redefine it. Dominion is stewardship, not ownership. When Scripture warns against playing God, it isn't condemning creativity, it's warning against the illusion of control without accountability. Mirror life raises that question quietly but firmly. Because once something living is released into the world, it doesn't ask permission to continue existing. You can't recall it, you can't undo it, and Scripture consistently urges caution where consequences outlast intention. Ecclesiastes reminds us, though no one can comprehend what goes on under the sun, even if the wise claim they know, they cannot really comprehend it. That's not anti-knowledge, it's anti-arrogance. It's a reminder that there are limits to foresight, especially when dealing with complex systems like life itself. One of the core fears scientists have is that mirror life may not be recognizable to systems that normally keep balance. Immune systems, ecosystems, cycles of decay and renewal. In biblical language, you could say it risks stepping outside the mutual recognition that holds creation together. Paul writes in Romans that the whole creation has been groaning as in the pains of childbirth. Creation is already strained, fragile, interdependent, introducing something that cannot be properly read by the rest of life could increase that strain in ways we don't yet understand. And this is where discernment comes spiritual, not just technical. Discernment is not asking, can we do this? Discernment asks, what does this serve? Who does this benefit? And what does this endanger? James writes, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt." Wisdom in Scripture is not raw intelligence, it is moral clarity shaped by reverence. What the scientists are requesting, an international summit, shared rules, collective restraint, aligns closely with biblical wisdom. It recognizes that no single nation, company, or individual should decide alone what form of life enters the world. The Tower of Babel story often gets misunderstood, but at its heart it is warning about unified power without moral grounding. Humanity speaks one language, shares one goal, and decides to build upward without reference to God. The issue isn't cooperation, it's self-exaltation. The belief that because something can be built, it should be. God's response is not destruction, but disruption, a slowing, a scattering, a forcing of humility. Mirror life is not Babel, but the pattern rhymes. Science today has extraordinary reach, and with that reach comes the temptation to confuse capability with calling. Scripture consistently separates the two. Just because we can reshape life does not automatically mean we should, at least not without deep ethical grounding, prayerful reflection, and shared accountability. There's also a human fear beneath this story that Scripture helps us name. If something goes wrong, if a new form of life behaves unpredictably, who is responsible? Who carries the burden? The poor? The vulnerable? Those without access to advanced healthcare or political power? Biblical justice always asks, who pays the price when decisions are made at the top? Jesus repeatedly centers those least protected by systems. Any innovation that risks harm without consent contradicts that ethic. Love of neighbour includes protecting them from unseen risks created by someone else's ambition, and yet Scripture also guards us from reactionary fear. We are not called to reject science, medicine, healing, knowledge. These are gifts. Luke, after all, was a physician. The issue is not innovation, but intention and oversight. Paul writes, "I have the right to do anything, you say, but not everything is beneficial." That verse could be written directly into this debate. Mirror life might one day offer benefits, but benefits must be weighed against wisdom, timing, and collective discernment. What's hopeful here is that the warning is coming before harm. That's rare. Usually we talk about ethics after damage is done. Here, the invitation is preventive, almost prophetic. Prophets in scriptures were not fortune tellers. They were early warners, people who saw where a path led and called for a course of correction while there was still time. In that sense, these scientists are doing something profoundly aligned with biblical tradition. They are saying, let's not rush, let's not assume, let's not gamble with what we cannot retrieve. So how should a believer respond to this story? Not with fear, not with dismissal, but with prayerful attentiveness, with gratitude that wisdom is still being voiced, with humility about the limits of human foresight, with advocacy for systems that prioritize life over speed, stewardship, and over spectacle. And perhaps most importantly, with renewed understanding that creation is not raw material, it is entrusted. Psalm 24 reminds us the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, not ours to experiment with recklessly, ours to attend with care. Mirror life forces us to look in a different kind of mirror, one that reflects not just our intelligence but our character. How we act when we stand at the edge of what is possible tells us who we are becoming. The scientists are asking the world to pause. Scripture has always asked the same. Mirror life refers to a hypothetical form of biology constructed from mirror image molecules, reversing the molecular orientation used by all known life on Earth. In late 2025, an international group of scientists called for global oversight and ethical restraint before such biology progresses beyond tightly controlled research, citing unknown ecological, medical, and biosecurity risks. So I hope that you found that useful. It does sound a bit technical, but if you listen to it again and again, you'll find that it is quite simple under all those big words. So here endeth today's lesson, and I hope it was informative and useful. I'm Lady Loy.